Wakasa Wakateji Sangat. Just a quick disclaimer, even though I'm sharing today, please understand that I'm not positioning myself as a teacher or any sort of spiritual master, just a mere student along the path with you, doing my best to share these teachings of the authentic masters of the East. And so please forgive me for any mistakes I may make on today's subject, which is compassion. So Sangatji, today we will cover one of the very important divine virtues of compassion and its offspring, kindness. In a world oft shrouded in darkness, fear, doubt, and confusion, it can feel like a dog-eat-dog world, hell-bent on hunger games that take your kindness as a sign of weakness. But the enlightened masters and great minds of humanity say otherwise. For instance, the celebrated poet Khalil Gibran says, "Tenderness and kindness are not signs of weakness and despair, but manifestations of strength and resolutions." The Greek philosopher Aesop says, "No act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted." The 14th Dalai Lama says, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." And the selfless Mother Teresa says, "Let no one ever come to you without leaving better and happier. Be the living expression of God's kindness, kindness in your face, kindness in your eyes, kindness in your smile." And coming to the lineage that we practice, Sikhism, in Ang 51 of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Guruji states, "Practice truth, contentment, and compassion. This is the most excellent way of life. One who is so blessed by the formless Lord God renounces selfishness and becomes the dust of all." So it seems that all the great minds and the enlightened masters look at kindness as this great, subtle strength. Yet, sometimes in the world, it seems like people just trample over the little flowers in the garden bed. However, we're going to take a closer look today to understand what is this strength that is behind this compassion. And so compassion and kindness is the show of true strength and understanding of the divine play. Those who claim to be strong must flex their muscles and wield this massive sword to show the power that they hold. But those saintly souls that live beyond duality see one and all alike. And so Sri Guru Arjan Dev Ji says, "The saints are tolerant and sweet-tempered. They treat friends and evildoers alike." Nanak says, "Those who offer them food of many kinds, or those who slander them, or those who are arrayed against them with weapons drawn, to them they are all alike." And so when all is one, there is no enemy, only the inner me, whom is liberated, whole, and free. And there's a beautiful Saki that illustrates this understanding, this deep understanding of compassion so wonderfully. And it is the story of Bhai Kanhaiya Ji. And so let's just go back in time to the time of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, the 10th master, which was around the 1600s. And so one day in a village in the Punjab, in India, a boy named Kanhaiya was born to a wealthy family. And as he grew up, Kanhaiya was always searching and learning about new things. He learned about life, and searched for answers about God from many, many different holy men. He loved the spiritual path. And so in his life, he chose, this different path from all the wealth that was in front of him from his family. And he became a deeply spiritual young man who loved listening to divine poetry, and he grew up to be known as Bhai Kanhaiya. And so Bhai Kanhaiya stayed on this spiritual journey until one day it led him to meet the ninth Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. And he had reached his highest point of spiritual practices to get there. And all of his searching had added up to this one pivotal moment of coming into the Sangat with Guruji. And so Bhai Kanhaiya was so inspired by the Guru that he began to serve him and became a very devoted Sikh. Being around the Guru and learning from him gave Bhai Kanhaiya such a beautiful, complete experience that he decided that he didn't need anything else that the world could offer. And so meeting the Guru is like finally seeing, your best friend or a long lost lover after a long separation. And so for Bhai Kanhaiya, The Guru's presence was so soothing to his mind that it brought great joy deep down into the essence of his soul, and he found this great stillness. It strengthened his heart so much that it became so big and beautiful at the time that he decided to become a Sikh and embrace the mission of the Guru. And so the student and the master soon became the same, aligned in vision, and together they increased God's presence on earth. And so with an open heart and love for all, he began devoting all of his life and time to serving Langar. And he served anyone and everyone all the same. His life began merging with the path of the divine and of the Guru more and more as his work brought this heavenly energy to earth. And Bhai Kanhaiya even opened a spiritual center so he could keep serving all people in his community and beyond. And he believed that God is in every single person. And he served that one God in all, that Ikankar. And he worked hard for many, many years of his life, just serving. And even until the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, became the Guru. And at the time, the land of Punjab was under attack, and Guru Gobind Singh Ji had to protect Anandpur Sahib Ji in a big battle. And the enemies that attacked Anandpur Sahib Ji and cut off the city supplies at the time. They wouldn't allow any water or food to get to the Sikhs that were there. They were trying to starve them off and weaken them. And soon it became very difficult to find any water. And many men in battle were weakened and wounded. And Bhai Kanhaiya saw all the wounded men on the battlefield. And with his love, he just felt compelled. He just felt like he just went straight into the battlefield and began giving water to everyone. Serving their parched throats from a leather water container, he gave them water equally to the wounded men from both armies, even the enemy who is trying to prevent supplies to get to his beloved Sikhs. And now, even though this wasn't normal, most of the Guru's Khalsa understood maybe why he was serving even the enemies, and they thought the Guru is such pure love, and we're all part of the Guru. We feel so proud of our brother for how he's acting. It is all God's play, and with the Guru's blessing in our own way, we too shall act with this kind of mastery. However, not everyone saw it in that same light as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and they didn't understand it. And so those Sikhs, they complained, saying, I'm sure it's great that he serves people, but we don't have enough water for ourselves. It doesn't make any sense that he's giving our water to the enemy. Plus, he's healing some of them. So what happens when the enemy recovers and comes back to fight us again? We must tell the Guru about this. And so that's exactly what they did. They ran to the Guru's courts and, levied a complaint. And so when they told the Guru this, he simply said, bring Kanhaiya to my presence. And so Bhai Kanhaiya was brought to him right away. And when Guruji saw the purity and devotion of his beloved Sikh who had served him and his father so lovingly, he asked, is it true what I have heard? Are you giving water to the enemy? And so Bhai Kanhaiya Ji replied, oh, my beloved Guruji, yes, it is true. When I look into the faces of all these wounded men, all I see is you. I have to serve them because all I see is you and God within them. And so Guru Gobind Singh Ji was very happy hearing his response and smiled as he said, you're right. And you have shown me today that you have really understood the Guru's words and lived by them. And so Guruji then announced to all his Khalsa, Bhai Kanhaiya has understood the teachings correctly. My beloved saints, try your best to learn like this, for the lessons that Gurbani teaches are priceless. And so Guruji then proceeded to give some herbal medicine to Bhai Kanhaiya and told him, from now on, put this on the wounds of all who need it. And Bhai Kanhaiya, began to salve, to serve all the wounded on the battlefield with love, and continued exactly what he had started. And so Guru Gobind Singh Ji later announced to the community that Bhai Kanhaiya was a saintly soul beloved by God, and that he served all without caring about who they were or where they come from. And he had attained the exalted spiritual state of ease and divine grace, and that he should carry on with this mission of service, and that many would follow his example in the years to come and keep the tradition of service to humanity alive. And so different people had different understandings of the teachings of the Guru. And Guruji said that the Sangat started to understand the Bhai had acted and lived the truth that many of them had only learned in words and meditation. Because there's a difference between just studying or understanding the words versus actually living and embodying. And so Bhai saw the divinity in others as during the most challenging times, even in the middle of intense battle, even in when people were trying to, kill his friends, his family, in such a terrible battle. And everyone soon realized that this being was actually extremely blessed. And so may we all attain a state of seeing God, this God in others. May we all live in this truth and practice in our actions wherever we go and whatever we do, just like Bhai Kanhaiyaji's example shows us. And so, surely, if humanity had achieved such understanding, there would be no war on the planet right now. But instead, we are constantly inundated with a bombardment of constant news from the front lines in Gaza, Ukraine, and many more places. Not everybody is as lucky as everyone in this Sangat, who may never have the bitterness of war in our mouths. And may we never have to taste that. However, one may think, how can we apply these teachings to our lives in a practical way? Even if we're not on the front lines of an actual physical war, there are battlefields everywhere. What about the daily battles we face within our own minds, within our families, at the workplace, and in our communities? We may not be on the battlefield losing our limbs, but the scars from poisonous words, inconsiderate thoughts, and abusive actions are still left on our hearts, and we carry around those heavy hearts with us. And if you think that you're just going to ignore the pain, like perhaps you've done in the past, sweep it under the rug, get so busy and distract your mind that you can't focus on it, or numb it in some other way, that it's just going to magically disappear, guess again, because it doesn't. Unfortunately, that pain builds up as bitterness, resentment, and potentially can even lead to revenge. And that suffering builds up as sadness, despair, and potentially even lead to spirals of depression. And maybe we've all experienced some of these emotions or situations in different degrees in our lives. However, we're going to look at it from a higher perspective. As Bhai Kanhaiyaji has himself. For if you have no enemy, who is there to fight? Yet, the closest people in our lives are often the ones that see our ugliest faces. We may say that I love you or we love them, yet why do we show them our meanest faces, our darkest sides of ourselves, our shadow selves? This is a very hard pill to swallow if we're going to be honest with ourselves. Why is that? And so on this daily battlefield, we must traverse through our relationships. There are these landmines. And these landmines are triggers. And everyone carries various triggers within them that release these waves of emotions followed by a flood of thoughts that can seem overwhelming and cause people to react without thinking about the consequences. And eventually one day, someday, someone is going to step on one and either trigger themselves or another person. And so how can we deal with these triggers in a compassionate way? When somebody gets triggered, it's a fork in the road. Literally, destiny forks in the road. You have infinite options, and you can either go to the left or you can go to the right. You can either cause more pain and suffering, further entangling yourself in your karma and maya, or you can see it as a beautiful opportunity to free yourself and another if dealt with in a compassionate and kind way. So we must understand what causes triggers in the first place before we get how to deal with them. And it's these hidden expectations, these unspoken needs, these past traumas and wounds that maybe we never healed, that we aren't aware of or we repressed. It could be rigid thinking or belief systems, stubbornness. It could be pent-up emotions that never got expressed properly. And these are just to name a few of the primary reasons. And so you'll want to take careful accounting of yourself if you notice any of these things welling up within you, and deal with them appropriately through contemplative meditation, or other spiritual practice that you may have to ground and center yourself. But how can we deal with them on this day-to-day basis? And moms, including my mom, all around the world like to say, if you have nothing nice to say, then don't say anything. Shout out to my mom. Thank you, Mom. Sage advice, no doubt. But let's expand on it a bit, right? And so if we go to the Masters of the East, Buddha says, he gives us a little checklist before we should open our mouths. Is it right? Is it true? And is it kind? Right? Firstly, what is right? That is a very subjective gray area. One person's right may be another person's wrong. However, there is a right in accordance to the true path of spirituality. And so we must understand the do's and don'ts of these spiritual masters to discern the difference between wrong and right and establish a moral compass based on the authentic teachings of the enlightened. And so we're invited to study our holy scriptures, to listen to spiritual discourse and seek the company of the holy so that we may be able to have the chance to learn. And in time and through consistent effort, we will be able to apply these teachings to our lives and understand what is right from wrong. For me, it's very simple. Is it bringing me closer to the divine, or is it taking me away from the divine? Right? So, and of course, studying your own scriptures in whichever lineage that you study would be a great starting point to understand what is right from wrong. Secondly, what is true? Again, truth, as you'll see, can be subjective, depending on which perspective you're viewing it from. Guru Nanak Dev Ji says that truth is high, but truthful living is higher still. Knowing the truth and being right, having just two of these three is not enough. You know, we're invited to live a Gurmukh lifestyle. Gurmukh being one who faces the Guru towards the divine light, towards that divine, and embodies the 5 divine virtues of compassion, contentment, love, humility, and truth. In doing so, we would align our thoughts, words, and actions with that of the righteous. And remember, there are always 3 sides to a story, right? In any conversation, any debate, any argument you have, there are 3 sides to the story. There's your story, there's their story, and there's the truth. Okay? And there's a short Saki that Bhai Sahib Ji illustrated to share this point with me. And it's basically, it goes as follows. There was a spiritual master and a disciple, and they were walking together through a market, and the master stopped them at a grain shop and told the disciple, watch what's about to happen at this shop. He told the disciple that a man whom had a brother was going to come in and weigh out the grain that he had harvested for the day. This grain was to be equally distributed between his sack and the sack for his brother, because they had an agreement that they would share all the grain that they harvested. The master told the disciple to watch carefully, and so he did. And so this man brought in 2 sacks and weighed the grain equally with the vendor. He then proceeded to equally distribute the grain between both of those sacks, and everything looked normal. Then, before he tied the sacks up, the man poured some grain out of one sack and more into the other, making them uneven. Now the master turned to the disciple and asked him to describe what he saw. The disciple replied that he saw that the man equally distributed the grain to both sacks, but then poured more into his sack and was cheating his brother out of some of the grain. This is what the disciple saw. So the master then told his disciple, well, confront that man then, if you feel that he's doing something wrong, and you should ask him why he was cheating his brother. And so the disciple, stood on that notion and said, okay, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to go and I'm going to ask this man why he was doing that. I'm going to catch this cheater right then and there. But when he did, he was shocked, as the man replied that his brother has a very large family and that he lives by himself alone. And knowing that his brother would never accept taking more than his fair share of the grain, he wouldn't allow for him to do what he did. So he has to do this before he drops the grain off at his brother's house. So his brother can have an opportunity to feed his entire family, knowing that he himself doesn't need as much grain to survive. So the disciple clearly was wrong in his perception of viewing what was actually happening. And yet he thought he was right, correct? So Sangat, in our own lives, in our own families, in our own relationships, there are always these three sides to the story: your story, their story, and the truth. And so this causes a lot of battles when we don't communicate this effectively and find a middle ground, a place to compromise, when we're not able to be compassionate, kind, or considerate of another person's perspective. And so what you believe to be true for you may not be true for them. Everybody is experiencing their own version of reality, their own perspective. Everyone has their view of what is happening, even if they both view the exact same thing. It's at a slightly, ever so slightly different degree or perspective. Therefore, let us not fall into judgment, jump to conclusions, and make assumptions that consistently lead to misunderstandings and arguments, but have an open mind that is curious, compassionate, and patient to allow the truth to reveal itself to us. And so lastly, we know what is right. We know what is true. But what is kind? And what is kind? For me, it is to have an earnest and gentle curiosity to seek that truth. Instead of focusing on the selfish desire to win, whatever conversation, debate, or argument you are having with someone, how about becoming curious, to ask questions, so you can gain a better understanding of why that person feels that way, or why they hold that belief system, or why they're carrying that perspective. Even if you know, like let's say you yourself are practicing the true path of spirituality, and you know better than maybe what the other person is telling you in that moment, this is an opportunity for you to practice humility. And by being compassionate, where each person is individually in their path of personal development and spiritual growth. And by practicing patience and active listening, one can allow someone to express the essence of their soul. And in doing so, you have the opportunity to act as a mirror and reflect back their words or thoughts so that they can see themselves more clearly, versus defending your ego or attacking them and trying to tear them down. But if you are not able to listen, you will not be able to be kind. Instead, your mind will be thinking, how can I win? How can I defend myself? How can I attack the other? It will be investing all of its energy into all sorts of cleverness to try and get what it wants: victory. A person like this may resort to interrupting, personal attacks, name-calling, raising their voices, or other intimidation tactics just to get what they want. However, a victory for the ego is a loss for the soul. Additionally, if you cannot even listen to your friends, your family, and your community, what hope do you have to being able to listen to the divine, to your guru or your spiritual teacher? This is why listening is championed as one of the most important skills to develop on the path of spirituality, and we must take earnest time and effort to cultivate this important skill in our lives, to truly try to receive and listen fully, with full attention. And regardless of how the other person is showing up, just by listening, we can still practice empathy by trying to understand the struggles of others. Sometimes a kind word or even just a listening ear can heal wounds deeper than we realize. And this is actually a form of seva as well. And so even if somebody has slighted you or said something negative to you, did something wrong against you, as part of compassion, we also can practice forgiveness. For holding on to any sort of anger or resentment only ends up harming ourselves. And by forgiving others, we not only free them from guilt, but also release ourselves from the burden of carrying that negativity around every single day. And so it really takes two, or it takes all, both parties must desire to move forward in a positive direction, work together, and align to the highest truth. If this is not the case, then the most kind thing one can do is to remain silent, create space, or even seek additional help. And so, what does Guruji say? Guruji, and I'm paraphrasing here, the saints only speak words of goodness. They only speak those sweet words. Nectar is on the tip of their tongues. And from this, we can be inspired to only speak those words that uplift, inspire, and create a more beautiful and harmonious world. Because words create realities. So be careful what you say, because what you say is what you pray. Those words, whether they are positive words or negative words, you're inviting that from your friends or family. You're inviting that from the divine to have that experience. So that is why the saints only are speaking these words of goodness. They're only projecting everyone in their highest. They're seeing you in your divinity. They're seeing that divine light in each being, right? And Guruji says, where you place your attention is what you will receive. So you have to ask yourself, is what I'm about to say or do going to add to this beautiful bouquet of flowers of life? Or will it completely wilt it and destroy it? Am I adding to this Garden of Eden that God has given us the opportunity to play with? Or am I burning it all down to the ground and creating hell out of my own selfish desires? Because it could really take you years and years and years to build a relationship with somebody. And in a single hurtful sentence or one single action could destroy all of it. Just imagine a couple's married for 30 years if one person just cheated on somebody. Or let's say you are a child and you look up to your father and you looked up to him for 10 years, 15 years of your childhood, and in one moment he says something that he's going to regret, that causes pain in your heart, and you carry that around in your heart for decades. And so we have the power, we have been given the ability to create, we have been given the ability to destroy. With great power comes great responsibility, so they say. And so one does not need to use these fear tactics, to use manipulation or control to try to get what they want from another. This is a selfish position that is unkind. It does not take into consideration others' needs. As Bhagavad Kabir Ji says, I do not fear anyone, and I do not strike fear into anyone else. Because modern life is already difficult enough, and we need not make it harder than it has to be for each other, especially for the closest peoples in our lives, our partners, our families, the people we work with every day, the people we see every day in our communities. We must bring our minds and our hearts into coherence together, to use our God-given intelligence to find ways to work together. It cannot be a one-way street. Everyone needs to buy in of their own free will and seek support and adapt as necessary through mutual agreement and respect for one another to make life more graceful for all. Why? Because the divine lives within all beings and all our hearts are so fragile. Please handle with care. One thing that I always like to imagine for myself is that whomever I'm speaking with or dealing with, that my divine is standing literally right in front of them. Like, would you say or do what you're about to do if the divine was right there? Like if you were literally talking to them, and if not, then you have the ability to strongly reconsider your position. As Sheikh Baba Farid says, O bride, you shall attain union with the Lord if you adopt the virtues of humility, forgiveness, and sweetness of tongue as the way of life. Of course, this is much easier said than done. It is the enlightened perspective. It is what we're aspiring to, right? And in the heat of moment, this can be very, very difficult. But that's why practice makes perfect. That's why bringing more awareness to these type of situations helps smooth them out in the future. Not only can we practice kindness and compassion for others, but we can do so within the battlefield of our own mind. Too often along this path, we can fall into self-judgment, comparison with where others are, or even self-loathing, thinking that we're not deserving of love or a good life or, being blessed. But understand, know that everybody, including yourself, is doing the best they can with the information that they have. If we knew better, we would do better, right? So we must not fight our minds. Bhai Sahib Ji always reminds me of that. But work with our minds to redirect its energy into the proper channels, into the proper thoughts, into the proper actions, turning negative thoughts into positive opportunities. So the next time you have a negative thought, can you see that as a positive opportunity to transmute that energy into something that bears more fruit in your life? All right, Guruji says, become Jivan Mukta, liberated while yet alive, by meditating on the Lord of the universe, O mind, and maintaining faith in him in your heart. Show kindness and mercy to all beings, and realize that the Lord is pervading everywhere. This is the way of life of the enlightened soul, the supreme swan. So this is the lofty goal that we are aiming for. Those supreme swans that swim on the still lakes of the eternal mind do not need to incarnate on this plane of existence. In the ultimate act of compassion, they make the sacrifice to share divine wisdom with humanity to help us transcend our karma and free ourselves from our own bonds. All the holy scriptures are the embodiment of compassion, a pure collection of divinity that has taken lifetimes to compile. In the example of just the Sikh lineage alone, imagine that it took the passage of 10 gurus until the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji was completed. Blood, sweat, tears, and countless lives have been sacrificed so that we could have a chance, just a chance, to understand what true compassion is. Unfortunately, many people do not take religion or spirituality seriously these days. For those that find some solace in it, unfortunately, sometimes it becomes merely a routine, something to do on a Sunday. Maybe it's just a community gathering or background filler noise. But later in life, these people will repent and regret. Sangat Ji, do not allow this opportunity to pass you. Do not overlook the words of the enlightened so casually. Do not get lost in the glitz and the glamour of Maya. Do not lose yourself in these petty arguments with those whom are so close to you. Take this opportunity to awaken to the truth. Chant the name of the divine. Study your holy scriptures and reflect daily on your thoughts, words, and actions. Find that Sad Sangat, that holy congregation that not only shares the divine truth but embodies it and models a pious lifestyle. Sit in their presence with an open and receptive heart and listen. Then apply those teachings in earnest to your life. And with consistent effort over time, the sharp edges around our hearts will soften and we'll come to know this true compassion that the enlightened speak of. And I'm always reminded by this quote. His Holiness, Sant Baba Jaswant Singh Ji Khalsa says, there is no seva without compassion. There is no compassion without love. And there is no love without faith. So no matter how dark your life may seem, no matter how hopeless communication with others in your family may seem, no matter how daunting this challenge may seem, Sangat Ji, have faith in those teachings of the enlightened masters. Have faith in the holy scriptures that you study. Have faith in the path. Follow the path. And be kind and compassionate to all that you meet along the way, including yourself. So bless you, Sangat Ji. Thank you so much for listening today, Sangat Ji. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Waheguru Khalsa, Waheguru Fateh. This poem was written quite a long time ago, so please forgive me if there's any mistakes in it. However, it is a poem about compassion. Probably about 7 years before I got connected with Song of the Divine Light. However, I feel that it's good representation from that level of understanding. So it goes like this. To hold compassion is to understand, not to stand over another woman or man, but to see each other eye to eye, knowing that your brain is throwing fits, trying to figure out why. Why did he do that? Why did she say that? But it's a trap. For once you agree, there is no longer a mystery. And even though you think you are free, you are locked in a box of thoughts that have you caught in a single line from point A to point B. But even the blind can see that there are no straight lines in nature. Resisting the flow, acceptance is the cure. For compassionate understanding is not demanding, you must do this, and then I'll love you. It's not judging. If you did that, then it means you're this. It is never fighting, so there's no need to strain your wrists and ball up your fists. It is to listen. Listen in with those who wail, toss, and turn, burning in their own karma while their soul yearns for freedom. But they can't feel the pain they dole, for their bodies are numb. But if you know this, then what's the matter? How could you ever succumb? Unless you are attached to matter, running from pain and towards pleasure, it is only the mind that does not take equal measure, weighing on the scales of wrong and right, that the dark is not the light, and that resistance is not my opportunity to practice unconditional LOVE. And so when we can balance this, then we can embody compassion in all our thoughts, words, and actions, for we must be able to put ourselves in their shoes, to be able to undo all the lies and help open our own eyes to see what is true. By listening intently, we can dig for the truth and find the roots to the tree that bore rotten apples. Tracing our steps back, we can move forward, hand in hand, when we all understand that we're all walking together as one in the Master's divine plan. Ay, causa, ay,